Greetings, everyone. Thanks for joining us for another episode of the Enterprise Edge podcast. My name is Mark Vigoroso, founder and CEO of the Enterprise Edge. I am thrilled today to be joined by Steve Birgfeld, Vice President of Information Systems and Technology at Blue Diamond Growers. Very excited about this one. Steve and I have known each other for a while, and he's doing some very interesting and innovative things, leveraging SAP and some other tools in a space of, obviously consumer-facing food and beverage type space that I think we can all relate to, but really kind of a nice end-user perspective. I think a lot of folks who have been repeat listeners and viewers of this podcast have heard a lot from the technology vendors and the providers and the folks that are building solutions, AI-enabled and otherwise. Well, this is more of an end-user practitioner perspective, right? Someone who's leading the technology strategy and operations at an end user corporation. So happy to have Steve. But before we get going, let's give Steve a proper welcome. Steve, thanks for being with us.
Yeah, glad to be here. Appreciate it, Mark.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks for taking some time out of the almond business. So we're going to talk a lot about almonds and which, by the way, is one of the healthiest things you could eat, right?
Yes,
But
absolutely.
we're gonna get started, as we often do, with some icebreakers and just get to know Steve a little bit, have a little bit of fun and get warmed up, and then we'll get into some business and tech questions about the path that Steve is leading his team and his company along these days. So, speaking of almonds, so Steve, you probably are a wealth of knowledge now about almonds. Do you have any fun facts about almonds that you think are, lesser known by the common man?
hmm Yeah, no, I think that the one key piece that people may not be aware of are there are hundreds of varieties of almonds across the globe and everything, really started in that Mediterranean, Middle East region and stuff. So people might think of almond as just one variety, but again, over hundreds of them. In
Mhm.
California, the growers focus on about 15 to 20 varieties, and that's really how we categorize them as well, is really into a handful of subcategories to use those accordingly. And some
Mm.
go the better almonds, better flavored almonds go into our branded snack nuts. The other ones, are ground up for our Almond Breeze, almond milk, and almond oil, and other pieces. So I think that's
Got
what
it.
surprises people most is that didn't realize there were hundreds of varieties.
Yeah, I did not know that. I did not know that.
Yeah.
Although I am familiar with some of those products that you mentioned, the milk and the snacks and whatnot. And I'm curious, in your travels around the country, around the world, what would you say is the most unexpected place that you've stumbled upon a Blue Diamond product?
No, again, we ship to over 90 countries and all that stuff. So, typically do see things in Japan and
Yep.
Korea and things like that. So I really couldn't come with anything too unusual. I mean, the one piece I saw was we have a great friend who produces a couple of cookbooks and all that stuff. And she actually created a recipe with some shrimp and mushroom using our wasabi and soy almonds and all that stuff. And
Oh, wow.
published that in the cookbook and shared it with us as well, and it was very good. So right,
Oh, cool.
yeah,
That's very cool.
hmm
Very cool.
hmm
Awesome. Well, now see, you know what? I haven't eaten lunch yet and I'm getting hungry.
yeah,
The why don't we do this? Maybe before we get into the business questions, maybe a sort of a flyby on, I'll call it the tech stack that you oversee.
hmm
I obviously know a lot about how you've leveraged SAP over the years, but maybe you could talk a little bit about just current state. What are
hmm
the primary applications and systems and perhaps some of the vendors that you don't have to list all of them, obviously, but some
hmm
of the key ones that you're relying on most as you're leading Blue Diamond through, ongoing modernization and
hmm
transformation efforts.
Yeah, no, appreciate. So I've been with the company now 10 years and joined right after they implemented the SAP ECC. So, the company at that time said, hey, we better take this IT stuff seriously. So, been fortunate enough to be able to kind of put together a strategy and roadmap. So currently we're at a piece where we are on S4, HANA. We're on
Hmm.
2023. We're working right now to upgrade to the 2025 version.
Hmm.
We moved to Rise private cloud in January of 2025.
Hmm.
We use Ariba. We use transportation management with the logistics business network. IBP, IBP is a critical piece of our business, definitely for demand and supply planning. Um, we're using BTP for the integration suite. So that's really all of our connector points, within the SAP ecosystem, but even with our EDI vendors and others from that side of things. Um, HANA Cloud Platform is our data warehouse that we are now migrating to BDC, the Business Data Cloud. So that kicked off, the first quarter of this year as well. And then,
Hmm.
we've been an early adopter with SAP for the private cloud, Rise Private Cloud on the Joule embedded AI pieces. So starting to experiment the use cases there. So
Hmm.
really have leveraged the SAP ecosystem, that it's always been, why not SAP? And it's always been good enough for what we've needed and great to build on. Outside of SAP, we're using Workday for payroll and HRIS. There's Ignition is the tool set we use for our manufacturing data capture. And then the other key application we have is our grower information system, which is internally built on the Microsoft framework, that
Hmm.
captures all the grower contracts and their deliveries to us and our payments to them. But then that all those pieces tie into our SAP ecosystem. So that's it in a nutshell.
Got it. Got it. So clearly, SAP backbone and
Yeah.
um, your first port of call is if you're trying to solve something is, can what can SAP do to help us in this case? Obviously, if not, then look at alternatives. But it's sort of the right of first refusal, so to
Right.
speak, which I think makes sense.
Yep.
Um, Very cool. So let's talk a little bit about the business model. I'm sure I didn't know this until you and I talked for a while that, Blue Diamond Growers is actually a cooperative. It's a grower owned
Yep.
cooperative, which creates a unique dynamic. And so you're kind of accountable to, um, I think, thousands of almond growers, not just shareholders. And I'm curious, how does that structure influence, how you think about tech strategy and investments and return and payback periods and all of that? And obviously you have experience within corporations as well. So I'm curious what the differences are.
Hmm. Well, yeah, so we have close to 3,000 growers in our cooperative, and they're all in the California region, from the Bakersfield all the way up to Chico from a California perspective. Um, those are our owners. They are the investors. We don't have an outside investment shareholders per se. They are the shareholders. Our
Yep.
board is made up of growers from different regions of the California region as well. Um, so and our mission is really to maximize the return to our stakeholders, the growers, and all that stuff. So anything we can do that improves the top line to improve the bottom line, really focused on adding that value. So we go into it with that perspective, just really high priority items where the value is there. Um,
Mhm.
so influencing our AI, I mean, we keep the board informed. I've done 2 or 3 sessions with them on our AI strategy and kind of AI
Mhm.
activity. Um, so they listen and may weigh in a little bit, but it's really the leadership within Blue Diamond that is defining the priorities and those aspects of it. So
Yeah.
so we put a lot of focus on the you know planning side of things, like I mentioned, and now leveraging AI to start doing some more predictive information there. We've used AI in our manufacturing side of things to kind of see where we can improve yields and performance and things like that. So some examples there again, but all those having an impact to the top line or the bottom line.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Got it. 3,000. That's impressive. I didn't realize it was that many.
Right.
And they're all
Yeah.
they're all in they're all in California.
All in California, right? And it
Okay.
is about half the almond growers that are in California are part of our co-op. Okay.
Okay.
And
Interesting.
it's 116 years old now. The co-op is so
Oh wow.
a
Okay.
long legacy. So right.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, it's interesting, in that, agricultural environment. Um, you and I have talked about this before. It's just kind of it's fascinating the data. The data call it, you can call it problem, but it's more like just opportunity, right? With you've got a lot of variability with agriculture, right? Whether it's weather or crop yields or soil conditions, right? And then you've got consumer demand signals and data that characterizes consumer behavior and consumption. Um, uh, and there's sort of this, obviously it's a value chain, it's a supply chain. And I'm curious if we look at AI, and AI is obviously it comes in many forms, and I'm starting to just kind of use terminology, enterprise AI, which sort of includes generative and agentic and conversational and a lot of different flavors of AI. But in that sort of data, increasingly data rich value chain, what are some specifically where AI in whatever form has delivered the most value, and maybe in an area that maybe you didn't anticipate, and then we'll have a follow-up question. Well, we'll start there.
Hmm. Yeah, so our model is the growers grow, whatever the growers grow, they deliver to us, and it's our responsibility to get the best use out of those almonds and maximize the return, like I stated. So
Yep.
they're somewhat on their own to figure out their side of the growing piece, but we do have our member relations group that really works with them on all those aspects of the soil and the water and the bees and the whole sustainability aspect of it. So really
Yep.
giving them guidance. We are managing a lot more on the sustainability side,
Mm,
so capturing certain data elements that we need to kind of help them from that side of things. So that really 2024, 2025 is when we started capturing more of the data from the field.
mm,
And I think we're in those early stages of where those can come into play. The other areas, like I stated, now that we've got the almonds, we've got to make sure we maximize that return. So exactly as you mentioned, a lot of emphasis on the demand side of things. The supply
mm,
planning is extremely critical. We've got three plants, three manufacturing facilities in California, and we leverage co-manufacturers accordingly. So making sure, we've got the right product at the right place, the whole distribution logistics side of it as well. Um,
mm,
so honestly, we're in some of the earlier phases of where AI can come into play. And like I said, we're doing use cases starting now with Joule, the intelligent apps from BDC.
yep.
We have definitely our marketing and innovation team have been leveraging AI for over a year now. And I think
Mm,
that is absolutely where we're seeing the value, everything from reducing the time to market to
mm,
identifying like that next popular almond flavor, like worldwide, not necessarily even in the US, North America side of things. So
mm,
leveraging that, building the content, building some of the graphics, so save,
mm,
6 figures easily each time they kind of go through that process. Um, so
mm,
they, I say they lead and but that's that front end to help us out accordingly. We've been doing different things, like I mentioned, for manufacturing, for the yield improvements. We're doing now starting to do more on the IBP, the integrated business planning side of things, to where we can get maybe some more predictive or better data from that. I
mm,
think one example, where we wanted to see what it would do, but the whole crop forecasting concept where AI could play. So that's where we started capturing yield numbers, weather data, trends accordingly. So we put in we use like 20 years of data to kind of get that historical model, and then trying to predict out accordingly, because we try to do at least a 3-year, 5-year planning, just so everything from distribution centers to capacity and things like that, we can better manage out, and even the
mm,
financials, to make sure we can try to manage some trends from that side of it. So we captured all this. We did a proof of concept on it, but I think the biggest, and our grower team said, hey, it got us about, what you predicted was about
mm,
70 to 80% accurate from there.
yep.
So we, you got to take the future data with the grain of salt. I think the
Mm,
biggest factor there was you can't really predict Mother Nature. So
yeah.
so that's where you've got to weigh out those things of, is AI going to really help, or there are so many external factors that you've got to weigh.
Yeah.
So today we're saying not enough value there, but again, this world is changing so rapidly that the data may improve in the future. So,
Yeah,
hmm
for sure.
hmm
Yeah, and I think you mentioned, I mean, the key word is value, and I think that's where a lot of the focus is now. I mean, I think even 2 years ago there was a lot of just almost like trendiness around in investing in AI, and without a lot of,
right.
you could say, discipline and what the return or the value
Yep.
plan was, and that's kind of gone now. But I think your point about value, right? So you think about operationally, with a supply chain of the complexity of yours, I guess the question would be, in your work with, or alongside SAP, have you sort of, do you have like a working idea of where the opportunities are, right? Even if you haven't deployed anything yet, but where are the opportunities when it comes to things like autonomous agents doing things
hmm
largely on their own,
hmm
somewhere in the operation, whether it's manufacturing or processing or supply chain or marketing or go to market, is, do you have like a methodology or maybe an approach that's sort of surfacing where those opportunities are?
hmm Yeah, again, I think being tied to the SAP ecosystem,
Yep.
what we've seen from the intelligent app concept and some of this
Yep.
embedded AI that, I use the term aspirational. Absolutely,
Hmm.
what we've seen is great, promising from that side of things, but we know it's going to be a journey to get there.
Yep.
Um, I I think easily over the last 7 years, it's been this focus on synchronized planning concept. So getting the demand signal supply, which triggers the supply, which can then manage our logistics side of it, or manufacturing side first, then the logistics,
Yep.
as well as tying in the financial data accordingly. So, I think it's that next level of sales and ops planning. But to us, I see that's the biggest value is getting that piece right, across all those dimensions will be where we see the biggest value. I've seen the example of our head of sales has asked that question of, hey, we do trade promotions, based on these SKUs, products, what might be the uplift for this customer for these products if we don't go do some trade promo. So trying to get to that level of, hey, here's where the demand might increase, and leveraging AI to look at that. And then again, from the supply planning side, um, what we've seen again is, hey, you've got a disruption in your logistics, model, or what's going on in the logistics world. It's going to impact these users. The agent can then come up with recommendations on where you might want to adjust your supply planning side of things,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
ultimately kind of go trigger the different change orders accordingly to go make those happen. So that's what we've been building. Everything we've done from S4 to get to Rise to now enabling BDC and
Mm-hmm.
the embedded AI and Joule capabilities. That's all part of that journey. And then we continue to enhance integrated business planning to kind of make improvements there to kind of help that whole model. So, right.
Got it. Got it. Makes sense. Makes sense.
hmm
So you mentioned a moment ago, Steve, about 3 to 5 years out, and um, gosh, it's hard to plan that far in advance these days as things are changing so fast. But I'm curious, as you look out, maybe let's say 5 years, um, and you've got 10 years under your belt, right? So you've got sort of this frame of reference now, and I'm curious, as you envision things evolving across the business, all the critical functions, um, put on your sort of, look in your crystal ball and say, okay, well, this, you could say, what would be the most radically changed function at the company as a result of perhaps what you're going to be doing with SAP over that time period, whether it's processing or the orchards or supply chain, product development, go to market. Is there
hmm
sort of like an obvious, it's almost like an extension of the previous question about where the opportunities are. If you look out in the future, are there sort of where the most transformation is going to happen, whether it's from operational efficiency, autonomous workflow, or semi-autonomous workflows that are agent driven. You could argue perhaps, like you said, S&OP is a classic example of,
Hmm.
maybe a fully integrated, maybe even autonomous process someday. Where,
Hmm.
what do you think that future state, you know,
Hmm.
you know, quintessential
Yeah.
transformational story is going to come from?
Yeah, no, I think you'll see my theme has really been focused on this synchronized planning capability,
Yep. Yep.
and exactly what I was saying about the intelligent apps and the demand, supply, manufacturing, all those signals. So that's the journey we're going to keep pushing. I mean, you got to get the
Yep.
data right, you've got to get your processes right, to really
Yep.
enable that. So, but that is absolutely where we see the most value. That if we can get the demand sensing capability correct, which will help
Hmm.
preload what we got to do from a manufacturing perspective,
Hmm.
distribution to make sure we've got the right product at the right place. As I mentioned, the varieties and how we have to manage, what's the best return of those almonds across that. So by again having the right demands accordingly. I guess one thing I didn't mention before, and people are or may be aware, is that we've got really two lines of business. One is that branded business, which is the snack nuts and the Almond Breeze almond milk. But the
Yep.
other side of our business, which is almost 40% of it, is the ingredients business where we resell our almonds to other CPG
Oh,
companies and other
yeah. Yeah.
countries to kind of use the almonds in their products as well. So making sure you got the right balance, to keep those key ingredient manufacturers happy while we also meet the demand for the snack nuts. So all those pieces are, just a lot of data to help with the decision making. And we get
Mm.
it done now because, um, you know, we've got a pretty decent integrated business planning tool. But again, taking that to the next level and really starting to see where that value comes.
Yeah.
We have a new CFO, and his focus is like it cannot be dashboards. It's really got to be decision analysis
Yeah.
capabilities for us. So, you know, full board towards that way. And again,
Yeah.
we'll ride along with SAP to where their embedded AI and Joule and everything takes us. But again, it may not be complete, it may not be fast enough, so that's where we'll look to augment with other players accordingly. So, right.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. I mean, I've
Hmm.
I work with a few BI,
Hmm.
traditional BI companies, and it's interesting how that whole space is morphing, right? Because, BI used to mean, like you said, dashboards. It used to mean,
Right.
transparent, backward looking dashboards. And now it's, people are saying, well, dashboards are going the way of the dodo bird because it's going to be all embedded analytics, decision enabling analytics in these autonomous workflows. And it's like, okay, great. That's a nice vision state, but that's not going to be a light switch. And it certainly isn't going to be ubiquitous, right? So to your point about the CFO, I think that is the sort of the aspirational, to use your term,
Right.
goal state. But I think it's going to be lot more of a measured evolution as opposed to like a
Yep.
big bang.
Yeah,
And that
exactly.
goes for a lot of these
Right.
transformational topics.
Yeah,
Um,
I think, trying to put that mindset in the company of it cannot be totally, we can't focus 100% on the short-term ROI. Again, we got to identify where there's value, but the short-term ROI might be difficult to measure. We got to focus on the innovation and the potential that this can bring us, a couple years, few years down the road. So,
yeah.
hmm.
What do you think? I'll use the word friction. Like, where do you think the most friction or challenge is going to be in some of these aspirational goals, right? Is it going to be organizational, technological, cultural, operational? Where do you think the most friction is going to come from?
um, no, I think it is, making sure we've got our data in place, making sure we've got processes in place. Um, I think the business, I don't think any of us really know what that future is going to look like. So
Yeah.
the business won't be able to tell us, hey, here's what we want to do. It's going to be more of, hey, here's where the technology can enable this. So it's a whole mind shift again that the business and IT has to kind of focus on of Here's the new way of working. So definitely risk with that from a change management perspective, the process change as well. So making sure your organization is on board. And again, that underlying factor of the data across the board, making sure it can be leveraged accordingly. We are taking that approach of there is so much data. We've been fortunate to have that SAP ecosystem and a great foundation in place, but it won't be perfect for the AI world. So we're going to take in chunks. We'll do some AI in different areas and really focus on getting the data right there, and then take on the next pieces accordingly. So that's the
Yeah.
approach we'll handle. But again, plenty of risk potential with that, right?
Yeah, no doubt.
I mean,
Always
not
is.
not shortchange even the cost factor of it. So,
Oh, that's
where
true.
we've
Yeah.
got to keep so much eye on that bottom line for us, that
Yeah.
that return to the grower. So, what's the cost to enable all this piece of it? Again, so going back around to that value and ROI perspective.
Yeah, exactly.
Hmm.
Exactly.
Hmm.
Well, it's interesting. You know, the new CFO, I'm curious about. We don't have time now, but it's interesting how that function, the function of the CFO is changing dramatically in my observation in this era that we're in. And obviously they're not all the same, but the function of the CFO when it comes to fiduciary responsibility, transparency, and accountability, and how they're playing in many cases a way more strategic role than they have in the past, and not just
Hmm.
being like the reporter of the news, right? And kind of
Right.
a
Right.
trailing indicator of how financials ended up, right? It's more of a strategic
Hmm.
partner. But again, that's
Yep.
another interesting
Yep.
evolution that at least I've seen in my travels.
Hmm. No,
Um,
and again, compliments to him where he has put this focus on the data, not the dashboards. He's
yeah.
aligned his team with, hey, you guys are going to be the data scientists to a degree of really defining what the business might need to operate. And then
Mhm.
he's got his team being the liaison to the business for helping to identify those areas. So, right.
Yeah, that's great. That's
Hmm.
great.
Hmm.
Well, Steve, let's do this. I know we're only going to scratch the surface today. We'll have you back later in the year, but we'll end with a speed round here with some other fun questions and maybe get to some insights as well that we haven't uncovered yet. But first one I'll talk about AI. Agentic AI and generative AI are probably the most talked about and the most real when it comes to an enterprise maturity perspective. Agentic being more of the autonomous action where agents are taking action based on very human-like reasoning, and then generative AI is more of a prompted experience, as you know,
Right.
which is the
Yep.
consumer ChatGPT experience that we're all now very familiar with, which is
Right.
you're
Yep.
prompting Claude or ChatGPT or Gemini to create something, to generate code, to generate content, imagery, videos, right? So I'm curious, just very maybe simple thoughts on how you see both of those breeds of AI playing a role over time at Blue Diamond.
Hmm. Yeah, definitely the agentic, like you stated, is going to be more that process improvement
Mm-hmm.
capability.
Mm-hmm.
So really looking at those pieces of it. The Gen AI is going to be the prompting that may or may not influence the agent as well,
Yeah.
from that side of things. So um, different piece. I mean, where we're using Gen AI, that's beyond the Chat GPT, which we are using, and the Copilot we use. We've done a couple top sides on some of the data, like I said, for manufacturing, where they can prompt it for, hey, give me this information accordingly. Some of the predictive analytics. So again, we see that, and we're starting to explore it and leverage it more so. Even our help desk is leveraging it from that side of things. Um, the agentic, we're in that early phases of seeing what the SAP capabilities will bring. We've done some automations, just from the old RPA capabilities that are now going to
Yep.
move into the agentic side of things. So that next level there, and again, strictly focused on the process side of things, and looking where we've got opportunities. We're working with the finance team, their accounts payable, accounts receivable, as an example, our credit organization of where we might see some agentic capabilities for them. So, right.
Wow, that's great. That's great.
Yep.
All right, so let's go back in time. If you could go back
Mhm.
and give yourself maybe the 2008 version of Steve one
Well,
piece of advice on anything, I guess, work related, what would that advice be?
mhm. Um, no, I think it's always that piece of emphasizing the business value, the ROI side of things. So,
Mm,
I was fortunate coming into Blue Diamond where the CEO, the CFO at the time said, "Hey, we've got to invest in this technology and go help map out that strategy." And we were running fast and we delivered a lot of different capability. But then stepping back, like maybe we overkilled it in a few places, which good or
mm,
bad. Um, and now shifting that focus now because cost constraints and things like that of let's really weigh the business value and ROI and making sure we're doing the right thing for the growers from that side of it. So again, it's just that keep that mindset of always weigh that value aspect of it. No matter how good things may be. So right,
yeah,
yep, right, yep.
yeah,
No. Hmm.
for sure. We oftentimes stay within our own industries, and I think we tend to, at least in my experience, lose sight of maybe lessons that could be learned across industries. And I'm curious if you had to switch your industry tomorrow, but you could bring one lesson from the almond world, what would that be? And maybe it's the one you just said. Maybe it's about a value orientation. I don't know. You
Hmm.
tell me.
Hmm. Yeah. No, I think, my career has been a mix of CPG companies, between the Blue
Mhm.
Diamond and Hostess brands and Quaker State Oil, but also
Yep.
the services world of things, like a Booz Allen and Unisys, those kind of worlds. There are similarities, and even when I talk to other industries, I still think it all goes back to the planning side of things. Either you're planning Twinkies and Blue Diamond almonds, or you're planning, hey, how do we best leverage these people across the services world and things like that. So
Yeah.
it's still going back to demand and managing the supply accordingly. So a lot of similarities across industries. It's just scale is a big factor and naturally different processes accordingly. So
Yeah.
again, it's that aspect of it. But again, I still think it's plan the work, work the plan, that the kind of
Yeah.
concept of really getting your planning pieces down strong, right?
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yep. And you and I were chatting before. You basically are the CIO for
Yes.
Blue Diamond, and I'm curious if you were able to have a coffee with the CIO of any company outside your industry to pick their brain and maybe get some insight, who would that be, do you think?
Mhm. Or, or what industry or what person? No,
Yeah, it doesn't have
no,
to be a person, unless you
no,
know,
right?
unless you have a
Yeah.
person in mind.
No, right.
But
Well,
like
no,
which,
I've been fortunate, and again, just my journeys through it to really interact with a lot of CIOs, across different
yeah,
industries and things. Even last week there was a SAP Connect for consumer industries and a lot of other
yep,
CIOs there. So
yep,
having that, it's always great to kind of share the journeys. I think the biggest thing I kind of weigh in of, hey, how are you managing priorities? Where are you focusing your attention on for one? And then managing that prioritization, and then what's the change management aspect of it. I think we
yeah,
do an okay job on change management, but is there areas of opportunities that they've seen to continue to improve upon?
yeah,
So yeah, those are kind of the conversations we are having. And
yep,
um,
yep,
yeah, and I think again, being in the SAP world, there a lot of them are interested in our how we've done our ecosystem accordingly. But
yeah,
I always like to hear, hey, maybe you didn't do total SAP ecosystem. How did it work out? Where were your challenges from that side of things? So, right.
yeah, yeah.
Hmm. Hmm.
That's great. Well,
Yep.
let me round us out here with one final question: is if we talked about managing the bottom line and cost itself as a potential friction point, but if you had unlimited budget to solve just one problem that you're facing at Blue Diamond, what would you tackle and how would you spend the money?
Hmm. I'm going to go back to that same thing. It's all about the
Planning.
synchronized planning, the
It's all about synchronized
synchronized
planning.
planning.
Yeah, yeah.
So that integration across the data points and all that. So the journey's been there. It's been somewhat slow. I'd say,
Yeah.
7 years already, but we've made such great improvements, but still taking it to that next level and getting it down to the agentic side of things. So, um, I wish it could be a little bit faster. We're waiting on SAP to some degrees and some of these other players that are coming together, but just continuing to focus. So, which is good to say, we've got a pretty good strategy mapped out. So let's just go deliver on that, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
hmm
Oh, that's great.
Yep.
That's great. Well, Steve, this has been awesome. I know we've got to the end of our time, but appreciate your sharing your story and obviously look forward to continuing to work together and follow your progress. And unfortunately, you don't have unlimited budget, but
Nope.
I
Yeah.
know I know your CFO is not going to grant you that, but I know that you guys are making some good moves and look forward to
Yep.
continuing to hear about that.
Yep.
So with that, we'll give Steve a
Mhm.
thank you. We'll thank everyone for your time and your attention and your participation in the Enterprise Edge community. And we will catch you on the next episode next week of the
Yep.
Enterprise Edge podcast. Take care, everybody.
All right. Thank you, Mark. Yep.